Welcome to Sigil Training. This is an exclusive and unique system for the inner order of IGOS. This is an outgrowth of many, at least 45 years of occult training, and is intricately connected to and linked into pretty much every single occult tradition, as well as the fact of linked into every single person's consciousness. This is why sigils are so powerful in themselves. Now, to define a sigil is any shape that produces a energetic field of some sort. These are called in the occult sciences energetic scalar fields, or scalar or informational fields that are produced that then create something or some reaction that is physical within nature. As with everything in the occult sciences, we are not interested in philosophical, religious, or spiritual experiences that don't relate to the physical reality. Plain and simple. So it has to produce something, and if that moves you to think in a higher consciousness way, well, that's a physical change. It has to have some permanent nature of changing you. And most spiritual things, if they are profound, change you physically. You think different, you act different, you consume different foods, you act differently. This has a huge ripple effect in your life and in the world in general. Now, we need to understand there is things called shape power. This means the shape of something gives it power. This can be one-dimensional or three-dimensional. Most sigils commonly are one-dimensional, but powerful sigils can be multi-dimensional or three-dimensional or even past that. A prime example of this is that a pyramid is a shape powered. No matter what you make a pyramid out of, it has power. And because of the shape of it, the actual design of it. The original pyramids were made out of sandstone, rocks, etc. And modern day researchers use wood just to form the shape of it. Metal is often used, etc. But whether these shapes intensify the energy or not, the ancients certainly could have, but didn't exactly coat their pyramids in metal or anything else. So the effect of these additions are really unknown and probably not overly profound. Certainly it's much easier in modern times to make a wooden stick-type open pyramid instead of having closed sides. And of course, the popular making them out of copper rods and other metals, again, helps the construction and makes them easy to mass market and to assemble. Certainly, if you sent people a bunch of bricks or stones that you had to put together, would be very cumbersome and difficult. So it's not the material per se, it's the actual shape of it. So it doesn't matter what it's made out of, it works because of the shape. So we do need to keep that understood on a level. Now, there has been, particularly done by Christopher Hills and Patrick Flanagan and others, research done into similar shapes that create pyramid-like energies, or even taking the pyramid energy and flattening it out. Now, we've seen these in many areas, and I don't know how many people understand that. It's usually a square, and it has what looks like almost a labyrinth in it. That is basically... and it's one, you have the main square, then you have a square that's smaller in it. Now this is one-dimensional, and it goes down smaller and smaller until it's a tiny square. And this symbolizes pyramid power and supposedly works like a large pyramid. I don't believe this personally, but this is the theory behind it, and this is how you would basically create a sigil. Now, I have many sigils such as this that are included in other sigils that symbolize and bring that type of energy into a bigger picture. So the shape itself, and you can take that three-dimensional shape, make it into one-dimensional, and still retain some of the empowerment. Now, Basically, we're talking about sacred geometry is what this boils down to, or our actual symbolisms, etc. We've seen this throughout our cultures, from the Christian cross, the swastika, the pentacles, or the Jewish star. All of these are symbols, and these symbols evoke meanings and energies wherever they are placed in the individual and as a symbol itself. Now, throughout the occult tradition, sigils are very well known, and everybody's looked at them, and I don't know if people pay that much attention to them. There are sigils that, particularly in the ritual tradition, that simplify spirits, the angels, etc. These are out through all the grimoires and used as a symbol representation instead of drawing the person's or thing's name. Now, anytime you start making specific linguistic statements, or you put together a system of writing, this starts to move something away from universal intergalactic empowerment into society empowerment, cultural empowerment. So the whole idea is that you don't necessarily want to do this, as it actually decreases the empowerment. But depending on what language you come from, you're going to obviously write the name of that particular spirit or god in that particular language. A lot of people don't quite understand that the English language understanding of the Egyptian god forms and the names they use, Ra, Set, Osiris, etc., even the word pyramid is not Egyptian whatsoever. It's Greek. As a matter of fact, the pyramids were named pyramids because the Greeks had little cakes that looked in that shape. So they said, well, that looks like our pyramid cakes. We will call them pyramids. The god forms in ancient Egypt were not called Thoth, Osiris, etc. Those are Greek variations of the Egyptian names, which can be looked up, and you can find out what they are in the actual original Egyptian tradition. Well, what does this mean? It means that you're moving away from the energetic vibration of a particular word, because you've now changed it into your own culture. Now, if you use the symbol for a god form, or a picture of that god form, an image, you're retaining the full potency of it. Very important that few people seem to understand these things. But when you go from culture to culture, because you must remember the names that everyone gives to everything are different depending upon your culture and your language. These are generally radically different. Yet the actual thing that you are discussing, let's say a bird is universally understood as a bird. You show a picture of a bird, someone's going to say that. But in Chinese is going to be very different than it is in French or Russian or Spanish. You're going to have a different name, pronunciated for your cultural language difference in that particular place. And your script, your written language, is going to be unique to your area as well. So these are all bringing down of it. But, anytime we do anything in life, as with visualization, when we discuss something, the actual image pops in our mind, not the word. And we discussed this in our visualization information that hopefully everybody is aware of. But a bird is a bird. Now, how you express that in your own cultural bias is not important, and only important to your regional area. But if you want to use the energy from something, or want to have universal understanding, you use a picture or image of it. It's just that simple. And of course, that holds much more power in the general understanding of it. So we see throughout all the grimoires, there are actual sigils, or images, or pictures that represent, usually in some geometric or some sort of non-picture-like form, meaning a picture would be a drawing of something. You could have a drawing of something that looks exactly like something, which would be identifiable factor, which is done in many cultures. Oftentimes hieroglyphics use these kind of pictures that mean something. Then there are representations of what you could call an energy force. In the old grimoires, the angels all have their own little personal sigils, which are a combination of different designs together that represent that particular energetic form. So I hope that's understood there. It's the difference between picturing a bird and picturing something that would be an energy. Let's go into something that is less known to us, but let's say a bird and let's say success energy. Well, how do you draw a picture of success energy? Success is a broad category. Do you draw a currency there of some sort? Well, success is money. Well, success isn't necessarily money. Success could turn into money, but you're the successful dancer. You're successful at love. You're successful at negotiations. These are not necessarily money represented. The best way to do that would then be to have a particular sigil that represents that particular success energy. Or if it comes to something very non-physical, that particular spirit. So that's how sigils work, and this is throughout history. People have had sacred symbols. There are many of them. I've gotten into these. One of the most simplest ways to understand sigils is from Mind Machines You Can Build book, where the author there, a noted rocket scientist who decided to get into metaphysics and radionics to some degree at the end of his life, has a particular two images there. There's a clockwise line circle, not just a circle, it's kind of a spiral, to give it better. And there's a counterclockwise. Now, to show you the power of just one-dimensional sigils, we recommend you go to that book and print those things out, or go online and print out a left-hand spin and a right-hand spin, clockwise and counterclockwise. You print these out, and I would suggest you laminate them because they're fun to carry around with you and use. You simply take this, and this is really pure scientific magic. You take the clockwise spin, and or let's say what I like to do is start off with the counterclockwise spin, and you take any one of your choosing. You have them stand upright and place their non-dominant hand, usually the left hand, holding the printed out sigil, usually a standard size paper there in the U.S., 8.5 by 11, with the non-dominant hand holding it against the person's solar plexus. Their other arm goes straight out from their side, as if you were pointing to the side, but your whole arm is extended. Because we're going to do that's basic, called muscle testing. So, you first of all, to do it correctly, you first of all just have them do that normally without holding anything. And you then press down on their arm and they resist against the press. And that is what you consider your control. Well, obviously everybody can do that. You're not there trying to push the arm down. You're just using minor pressure on that arm and then the person reacts to that. So the person will react to that and they'll be able to hold their arm up. Obviously, they just tense the muscles so they can't be pushed down. Now, the next thing you do is you place the actual counterclockwise circle on their chest, which they hold. You don't have to hold it in front of them so they think you're doing something weird. You simply have them hold it and repeat the same thing. They will be unable to hold their arm up. And you can take a bodybuilder, you can take someone who's extremely fit, you can take a 10-year-old, you can take a man, a woman. This will weaken them regardless of the physical. They will be unable to keep that arm up with minor pressure. You take that away, you put on the clockwise spin, and they're Superman. Not only were they able to keep their arm up, they're able to keep it on easily, and they feel empowered. What is going on here? This is mind screwing in its simplest and greatest understanding and demonstratable. If you ever want to prove something to someone, that's what you do. Plain and simple. So, how can you? Well, you're tricking me. You're giving me a Jedi whammy or some ridiculous nonsense. Plain and simple, you're not interacting with that person whatsoever other than using, and you don't have to use your whole hand or anything else. You can put 2 fingers up there and press down that weak arm like it was a feather. You can then use your whole arm to do that, and you need to press it straight down to strengthen that person. Simple and as easy as that. What does that prove? Well, that proves that a symbol printed on a piece of paper is super powerful in interacting with you. The other main thing that I discovered over the years is I'd bought some Egyptian artifacts, small artifacts from the original kingdoms that were placed in frames. These frames, and we, as with any occult scientist, when you get anything, especially of age or coming from things, you test whether the energy coming from these is positive or negative. We found that the energy coming from these that we had purchased were all negative. Well, you don't want to put that up in your house. How do you change that? Well, there's the sacred symbol of the G. It kind of looks like a capital common Roman script G. Now, these are found in a lot of churches and other places that they had one of these G's after another there, and it was unknown why they did this. Well, it comes to prove that this draws in positive protective energies. Now, on these framed artifacts, we simply went and took a piece of sticky paper, drew this G on it, placed it on back of the actual frame, and guess what? The energetic field coming from that frame was totally changed to positive. What is going on? Well, what's going on is the power of sigils. So, there are many different sigils, and of course, few people understand that hieroglyphics in the Egyptian tradition was never used for common writing. Those were magical writings. The Egyptians did have regular script, which looked like the god-awful script that we see from the Middle East in general. Magical scripts were always done in hieroglyphics, similar to what the Mayans did. Again, they were making pictographs that had demonstrations and energetic symbols in them. So what you do there with that's the understanding of sigils. Now, the typical sigil, and of course, I've taken this to a much higher art, has just a circle usually, as we see in the Solomon seals, etc., and they put little glyphs within that, and you can see everything that's going on. This is a very limited way of doing things and only allows you to what can fit in a circle, and I find that actually having or knowing what's in a particular sigil doesn't help the situation. So the whole idea with sigils is to put many more in there and use more interesting images. Now, the other thing we need to understand is that based on human understanding, while you translate language, script, etc., through your mind that then transfers it over to pictures and then responds to it. When you have a picture, it goes directly into your mind, and especially if it's magically based, it starts empowering you because it's not being filtered. It's not being figured out. It's sending energetic scalar field energy to you, which means it's sending, making, happening energy into your consciousness directly. That's what a sigil does because it's a picture. It's an image that's producing it. So just like the image of a flat pyramid produces, just like the spiral produces that, when you look at these things, it is changing, you're taking the energy into you. If it's attached to an object, it's empowering it, as we've seen with the picture frame. So all of this is then, what do you do with that? Well, the medieval sigils were very primitive. They also didn't use colors or anything else. Now, there is, if you made them correctly, they talked about making them on certain hours of this usual astrology connection. They were all said to be made out of precious metals as a general rule, because precious metals do activate everything. Gold is very unique as a substance, so is silver and copper, which is a very active mineral. You place anything on these things, particularly gold and of course copper as well, and it starts this process of breaking down whatever touched to it, which is why bacteria and other things won't grow on copper, silver, etc. They tend to tarnish, but bacteria don't grow. So as we understand these things, well, how can this? So if there's all these energy and all these symbols, well, how can you? Now, they've been used through magic consistently. That's why you draw circles. That's why you draw the spirit's sigil again to attract it, etc. What do you do further than that? What if you want to combine different things? Well, this is where the high art of sigil making comes in. How do you combine things? How do you take sigils and put them together in a category which will then empower them for a particular need and purpose? And then how do you direct them, if you desire to a specific subject? Now, there are ways of doing this, and these will be covered in the additional training audios. But this should give you an excellent idea of what sigils are and how they work and how powerful they are. I strongly recommend that you try these things, particularly the spirals, for yourself. They are mind-boggling, and they're great fun to do on friends and other people who just are astonished by this. When you are unable to physically keep an arm up when somebody is pressing down on it with a couple of fingers, this makes a strong impact on others and even yourself to say, gee, what is going on here? These sigils are powerful. Now, many things can be checked by this response as well, and it's a great way to test magical and non-magical things. People who take supplements and other things, this is the way you test everything. Muscle testing is extremely powerful. So, but doing this is getting to the core understanding of what sigils are. Now, there's many variations to energetic images and pictures, etc., which I will get into in other audios.